Good day, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Just Fish Outdoors. I'm your host, Dale York, and I designed Just Fish Outdoors to focus on freshwater lakes and streams and to provide information, tips, and techniques, along with how-to segments for catching everything from crappie to catfish. We will also provide tips on equipment, tackle, boating, and much, much more. All of this is aimed at helping you catch more fish and have fun doing it. So join us each week as we talk about my favorite subject, fishing. That'll bring us to our special featured segment. Today on our show, I have Randy Claybourne, and one of the subjects that came up, and I've had some emails about, is night fishing. People ask some questions about night fishing and some tips and techniques. And Randy, you and I are going to talk about some night fishing stuff today.
Hey, thanks, Dale. I'm looking forward to it.
You know, really, we start to talk about first, if you're going to be fishing, one of the primary things is to stay cool.
Oh, boy.
Because it's going to be miserable out there, don't you think?
Oh, gosh. Really hot, 85, like. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, one of the things we'll start with is we'll start talking about equipment. Some of the things you need to really pay attention to and to have on your person if you're going to be equipped for this night fishing. You know, it's a totally different deal when you're out there at night. You have some challenges to overcome, so it's really important to get organized. There's a few tools that you need to have on your person that you wouldn't have during the daylight. One of those things is a headlamp or a small LED lamp that you can put on your hat brim. You know, you're going to need light to do everything.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that, Dale. That headlamp is so important. I got stuck out on Lake Fork last year. I was by myself in December. And got out there, and I had 3 or 4 flashlights out there for my hat, and but I didn't have the batteries checked, and so I didn't do a good job, and I ended up having to run back to the boat ramp and go get some batteries. So that is the most important thing I can think of almost.
Folks, what I usually do is I usually, before I ever pull my boat out of the garage, I go through a little checklist that I've created, and that's one of the things I normally check. I'm sure I've done the same thing you have over the years, but I usually go through this little checklist. I check my flashlight, I check my running lights on my boat. I check to make sure my boat starts. I check all my safety equipment, make sure all my safety equipment works. I check my spotlight. A spotlight's invaluable when you're moving around at night and with your big motor. You really, really, really need to have a spotlight. Just go through that checklist before you ever pull it out of your garage. That way, when you get to the lake, everything works and you can settle down and do what you came there to do.
Yeah, one thing I'd throw in there also on that, Dale, is if you're a wintertime night fisherman like I am, you got to go through all your checklist and get your clothing on, your cold weather gear, and you got to have all that on. And, there's a lot of items, undergarments and jackets and waterproofing and gloves, hats, things to keep your ears warm, your hands warm, just everything.
Right.
There's just so many things in that checklist that I think a person really needs to look at to make sure they have before they get out there on the night.
Yeah, what we're trying to emphasize here is, this night fishing is, like I said, it's just a totally different creature. I mean, you got to sit down and prepare for this in order to have a good time on the water. You got to do some of these things. You got to have a checklist. You got to go through, check your boat while you've got the light to do it or the daylight or whatever. You've got to do these things. Another just something you just can't do without, and that's a black light. When you're out there night fishing, a black light that will fluoresce your line. You can use a number of lines that will fluoresce. Monofilaments will look like a 2-inch rope out there going across the water. But you've got to have a black light. Some of the strikes you'll get at night are so subtle, they're so light that if you don't have a black light, you'll never see them. You'll never detect the strike. So a good black light is
It's just like having a reel on a rod. It's just that important. You've got to have a good black light. Don't you agree?
Oh, totally. I think that I've had some fish in the past, like you said, subtly, you just never felt them pick it up. But I actually would catch that slight jump of the line from that black light lighting it up, and that's what gave me the order to set the hook.
Yeah, you see that line do something that it's not supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly.
It moves left, it moves right,
Yeah.
it jumps up, whatever it does. Or in some cases, how many times have we been deep fishing a hole in the summertime? We're fishing 25 foot of water, and we throw that jig out there, and that jig never hits the bottom.
Compared to lawnmower hitting a brick.
Yeah, exactly.
And when
exactly.
that line just jumps a foot.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes all you'll see, you think, well, gosh, that jig should have already hit the bottom, and then you look out there and you see your line moving off to the left or moving off to the right and picking up velocity at an alarming pace. So, having a black light is just, like I said, it's just like having a reel on a rod. You cannot do without it. So, spend some time. There's a lot of black lights on the market. You don't have to spend $300 for a black light. There's a lot of black lights out there on the market that'll do the job until you figure out how much night fishing do I really want to do? How deep do I want to go into this? Night fishing can be awesomely productive year-round. I'm not just talking summertime. I'm talking year-round. So, look into black lights. Like I said, there's a bunch of them out there. Everything from Bass Pro to Wally World. And then, if you decide you really, really like the night fishing, there's some others available that you can move up the ladder to spend some more money, and they'll even produce more light than what some of these less expensive models will do. The next thing we're going to talk about a little bit, and I really want to emphasize this, folks, is safety tips. There's a lot of things that you're going to run across on the water at night, and you need to be prepared or have some kind of gear available or have a plan available. One of the things you want to do is you want to wear a comfortable PFD all the time.
Agree.
I mean, Randy wears his all the time. I wear mine. There's just a lot of things that can happen, especially when you reach my age, where you're not quite as stable on your feet as you used to be, and you sure don't want to be in a situation like that. Another thing is, Randy, do you sit down when you fish at night?
I do. I sit down and get comfortable, and I fish slow, so I'm not up there really trying to muscle the trolling motor around and get down the banks and everything. I'm fishing usually main lake water.
Yeah, I think we need to listen to what he just said there a little bit. He's fishing comfortable, okay, and that's very important. You don't necessarily want the trolling motor on 36-volt high going down the lake throwing a spinnerbait at Mach 5, because that's a real good way to wind up getting wet, especially at night. So, we talked about how, producing big fish is all about picking the water apart and fishing slow. And in order to do that, I think it's very important you have to fish comfortable. And I think that's what Randy's telling us. He gets comfortable. He has a full-size seat on the front end of his Ranger, and he sits down in that seat. He gets comfortable, and he just picks that water apart piece by piece by piece.
I agree, and like you say, I got my kill switch connected to my PFD, and I try to think ahead of those things. When somebody's fishing with me, I've got a rope tied on to my throwable. I just did that this year, where in case somebody did go in the water by some chance, and even though they've got that PFD on, I've got a rope tied to that throwable, and that way I can throw that thing over there with that, and the person's not standing or sitting in the water with just that throwable and their PFD. I got a rope where I can pull them in case I'm out there fishing in 10 or 15 mile an hour wind, which I am a lot of time.
Right.
And at night. So.
Yeah, and that's another good safety tip to have. Mm-hmm. Not only to have that throwable handy, but to have a rope tied to that throwable where you can retrieve the person if that becomes a problem.
It's not required, by the way. It's just a
great safety tip for night. Yeah, I fully agree with that. Have a cell phone in your boat. Most people Who doesn't have a cell phone anymore?
Got to.
But, have one in your boat. When you're going out for the night, make sure your loved one or someone knows where you're going to be. That way, if you do have a problem, say it's just a motor problem where you can't get back to the boat ramp and you're gone for X number of hours past what you should have been home, they can tell someone where to go look for you.
Hey, I generally make a pre-fishing plan, just I guess like a pilot does, and I'll make a plan and I'll have a aerial photograph of probably where I'll be fishing, and I'll give that to my wife, and so that way if something, they know where to look for me.
Yeah.
So I've got a pre-fishing plan,
There you go.
I would call it.
There you go, and there's nothing wrong with that. Another thing I highly recommend you doing, and that's to buy one of these plastic waterproof bags and put a change of clothes in there. And keep that in your boat at all times, especially when you're doing like Randy's talking about. Randy and me fish a lot of off-peak time, meaning the water temperatures and the times of year are in the fall and winter. And, if you did happen to fall overboard and get wet, you can pull out your change of clothes, get comfortable,
Sure.
and, put your dry stuff back on, and you can continue on through the night fishing many times.
Exactly.
Yeah, but if you don't have one of those, you can get into some situations where you really need to go back to the truck real quick and crank up the heater because you're going to freeze your butt off.
Yes, you could.
Yeah, another thing I think is really important is always fish with a buddy. Night fishing is different. It can be inherently dangerous if one doesn't take precautions. And not only will you spend more time on the water if a buddy's in a boat, but you'll have that extra peace of mind as well, and have somebody to talk to, at 2:00 in the morning when your brain's not working too well. What else comes to mind, Randy? What are some of the things you think about?
Well, I think it's a great time to get out and fish, and that's night. And I've got 23 years of night fishing. All I do. I don't hardly day fish. I fish some, but you got the lake to yourself. You got very few boat wakes, very, very little boat wakes at night. You got calm water generally. It's always 5 or 10 degrees calmer at night than it is during the day. And then, instead of your fish being all up in the cover, buried up from the direct sunlight or in shady spots, at night they kind of loosen up and get out on the move. And the other thing would be that I can't stand is I'm getting sunburned all the time when I get outside, and I enjoy the moonlight fishing if I can, but it's not something I have to do, but I enjoy the moonlight, but the dark moon is okay.
Well, that's a passion we have both shared for 20 some odd years is night fishing. We both really, really enjoy it. For whatever reason, we seem to excel at it. Maybe we're just different. I don't know.
And we work all the time. We work during the day, and the only time we got to fish is at night.
That's true. So. That's true. That is. Another thing I'll throw out there too is, when you're moving around at night, the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to outrun your visibility. If you're running the spotlight or if you're seeing by the light of the moon, there are people out there, folks, who will actually set out on these points and on these pockets with no lights on. And, that's one thing you have to be constantly vigilant of is these people that are sitting around on these lakes and they don't have one light on. And, they are not only a hazard to you, but they're a hazard to themselves. I mean, that's a real good way to get run over. Oklahoma state law requires you, even when you're anchored, to have your back white light on, your anchor light. And when you're running, to have your bow and your anchor light on, or your bow and transom light on.
Very dangerous.
Yeah, and many states are the same way.
Mm-hmm. Very dangerous at night.
Go to okboated.com and you can read all the regulations that are required for lighting and this and that and the other. But the important message is don't outrun your vision. If you're running faster and you can see in front of you for a distance, you need to slow down, break out spotlight, and just slow down. That's the important thing.
Mm-hmm. Agree with you on that, Dale.
The next topic we'll talk about is just in general. we'll start talking about color combinations. How to lay out your boat. Where kind of key points to fish. And one of the things I'll start talking about. We alluded to earlier is line watching. It's especially important for fishing slow-moving baits like jigs and worms, especially at night. The fish may not be aggressive, so the illuminated line makes it easy to detect the strike or the subtle twitch or anything. Color combinations. Randy, I think we know you're a black and blue guy. What
Definitely.
other things?
Oh, black and blue is the color of choice for me, and the clearer water and at night. And one thing about that watercolor I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit with you, Dale, is that if a person gets out like I did a couple of years ago and was fishing some fairly dirty water, that jig is not going to work for you very well. And so you really need to try your scent and actually avoid all the nighttime fishing you can in dirty water, because really that's one of the toughest nighttime conditions you can probably run into. I mean, I can take bad 15-mile-an-hour north winds and 20-mile-an-hour north winds, but you get dirty water and night fishing, and man, that really gets tough.
Yeah, I think I think the bass don't necessarily exhibit the same behavior in dirty or off-colored water as they do in clear water. I think you're able to get much closer to the fish. I think daylight becomes less of a factor. Noise becomes less of a factor. I just, as that water clears up and gets clearer and clearer and clearer, especially this time of year in many states, not just Oklahoma, those fish just go nocturnal. The big fish just go nocturnal, in my opinion. I mean, it is so important to understand the relationship between night fishing and clear water.
So very important.
And like Randy says, if you're fishing a dirty water situation, night fishing really becomes less of an option.
Totally.
You're going to have to get out there with everybody else and rack it out just like everybody else does.
And I'm talking water where you can, if you have a foot and a half of visibility, you're all right. But it's when you're really talking about keystone color or Eufaula sometimes get that way. That's what I can think of around here. Right. But when I see my lake where I fish so much look like that, and I know I'm in trouble unless I'm on a day pattern and working that daytime fishing.
One of the other real key things we'll give to you folks is reduce clutter in your boat. Arrange your boat in such a way that you can literally run from the front to the back and make laps in your boat, and you're not going to destroy $200 rods in the process.
Done that.
Been there, done that. Yeah, we both have. Lay your boat out in such a way, don't lay 10 rods on the front deck. Pick one rod, maybe two rods, depending on how brave you are, and only to have those out. Have your landing net stowed in such a way that you won't trip over it. Don't have plastic boxes or things all over the carpet where you're going to trip, knock them out of the boat, or you're going to jump down the bottom of the boat, fire up a big motor, take off down the lake, and hear a rattle splash, and you have no idea what you just lost.
Guilty here. I've done that a time or two.
We've all done that as well.
Totally agree. You got to have got to get rid of those rods. Put them in your rod box, because wow, how many times has that happened to me where you can't see real good, and I just kicked one off, and I've kicked off walkie-talkies, cell phones.
Yeah, I hear
just
you.
Accidentally, because I left too much clutter in there, and that's just one of those issues I've always had, is I do leave way too much stuff out. So I think you're picking on me a little bit.
No, I'm right there with you, buddy. I've done the same thing. I've had to replace rods that I shouldn't have had to replace. They went swimming without me. So I think the point we're trying to make here is reduce clutter.
That's right.
Keep your boat clear when you're night fishing, because you just don't know what's going to happen. when Randy and I hook these bigger fish, sometimes they'll go around and around and around a boat on you, and you have to be able to go right with them, or you're going to have a real big problem. Another key thing to point out here, even in the dark or the full moon phase, is fish lighted areas, whether it's a boat dock, whether it's a boat ramp. My gosh, I can't tell you how many good fish I've caught off of lighted boat ramps.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just anything that's got a light close to the water's edge. The fish will feed facing into the light. What they try to do is back off in the shadows and look toward the light. So keep that in mind as well. Don't get in the middle of the light and fish the perimeter. Slowly, when you get up to a light, slowly fish your perimeter and just slowly work your way in. Don't be in too big of a hurry to get to the center of the light.
I agree. I was thinking about that. I think 2 years ago in March, we had moved up in a light, and you could see a lot of fish moving around in the light, and they were pretty easy to catch. But the bigger fish were coming off of the edges of the light.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
so,
You'll see the smaller fish dart in and out, to hit a shad or whatever. But the bigger fish, they don't dart anywhere. They just kind of sit out there and wait for a slow, easy meal, Another thing we want to point out, folks, is slow. Slow. I don't care whether you're throwing a crankbait, a worm, a jig. I don't care what you're throwing. Slow.
Oh, also, Dale, be ready with a net.
Yeah.
Have that net set aside, because if you really are out there for a big fish, and I know a lot of people lip them and everything, but I tell you what, you don't want to lose a big one. And if you got a net and you get savvy with that net and you get pretty competent with it, you can get that net down there and catch that fish. And so, make sure you have your net ready to grab. I mean, right next to you, because I've lost some really nice fish because I had to dilly-dally around to get that net out.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Sometimes you just can't get to it fast enough. You need to have it. You need to, when you stop and get ready to fish, I think what Randy's trying to point out is, go ahead and break that net out and put it someplace where it's very easy to grab a hold of. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I want to point out too is learn to tie a knot with your eyes shut. Pick a knot that's very, very easy to tie. Very easy to tie, and learn how to tie that knot with your eyes shut. And, that will save you a lot of time sometimes when you're trying to retie, especially if you're fishing monofilament line. Go with something that's real easy to tie.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it's tough at night, and that's where that little flashlight comes in on your hat. You'll be looking down trying to find that, and if you have that vision problem like I do from being a little older, it's tough to get that line through there. So.
Yeah, I've had to stick my tongue in the corner of my mouth more than once trying to stick that through there. That's for sure. Yeah, we all suffer from that. The other tip I'll give to you folks, or one of my things, is if you're fishing heavy cover, whether it be weeds, lily pads, timber, whatever, fish braided line. I can't emphasize that enough. When Randy and I are fishing Lake Fork and we're throwing big jigs and we're fishing for big fish, we are throwing braided line, period.
Agree. Totally. Yeah, and if you're throwing spinner baits out there, and even, I throw the jig and Gene Rue hog crawl, but when I get the spinner bait out, I'm throwing braided. And I know some people don't like throwing spinner bait with braided line, but boy, I do, and the strikes are just knock you down on it.
Yeah, and like we alluded to last week, we talked briefly about it. That we started actually boating 10+ pound fish when we went to braided line on Lake Fork.
That's right.
We had never boated a 10-pound fish until we went to braided line. We've hooked several of them, but we did not catch one until we went to braided line.
I agree. We've had several bust off in that using monofilament type line back then, because I don't think they had fluorocarbon then.
Sum it up for us, Randy. What's the number one thing you think about when you're night fishing or going to go night fishing?
Don't forget to run a line. Get out there if you got your Lowrance or whatever type you have, run it and get a line where you're going to go that night if you're going out into a heavy covered lake. and run a line with your Lowrance, kind of know where you're going to go, and then go into those spots. Do not go out running around the lake at night, especially timbered lake of any sort, just running around it, not knowing when you're going. Know where you're going to go right to it, and idle into it.
Heck of a safety point. Folks, send us an email. Tell us how you like the show or how we can improve on it. If you have a suggestion or topic, let us know. We'll try to put a show together for you. Randy, thanks a lot, man, for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
I'm looking forward to our next fork trip. It's coming up here shortly. And if you would like to know any more about Just Fish Outdoors or anything we can help with, just drop us a line. JustFishOutdoors, justfish.com.
Folks, thanks for listening. Be sure you catch us next week. And this is Dale York for Just Fish Outdoors saying, we'll catch you later.